My name is Penelope, and at 34, I've dedicated the last 8 years of my life to climbing the corporate ladder at Jackson Media Group. Tonight, I left the office at 9:30, exhausted after finalizing a major presentation. 20 minutes later, standing in my kitchen, I realized my phone was missing. Despite the late hour, I decided to drive back to retrieve it. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw in that dimly lit parking lot. My husband Ryan's car with my boss Diana sitting inside. Before I tell you what happened next, hit subscribe if you've ever had that gut-wrenching moment when your entire reality shifts in seconds, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I handled what came next. I met Ryan during our sophomore year of college. We dated briefly before life pulled us in different directions, only to reconnect 6 years ago at our mutual friend's wedding. The chemistry was instant, like we'd never been apart. Within a year, we were engaged, and our wedding day 5 years ago still ranks as one of the happiest days of my life. Ryan built his career as an architectural designer at Westbrook Partners, one of the most prestigious firms in Boston. He had an eye for clean, modern designs that earned him recognition within the industry. I admired his creativity and dedication, the way he could transform empty spaces into something beautiful and functional. We complemented each other perfectly. His artistic vision balanced my analytical marketing mind. We purchased our suburban home 3 years ago, a charming colonial with a wraparound porch and enough bedrooms for the children we plan to have someday. Every Sunday morning, we'd sit on that porch with coffee, planning renovations and dreaming about our future. Ryan would sketch design ideas while I researched neighborhood schools. Everything seemed to be unfolding according to plan. My career at Jackson Media Group had been steadily advancing since I joined as an assistant 8 years ago. 2 years ago, I was promoted to marketing manager, which put me directly under Diana Matthews, our marketing director. Diana was a force of nature, brilliant, intimidating, and charismatic. At 42, she had the career I aspired to build, and I considered myself fortunate to learn from her despite her demanding management style. Diana pushed me harder than any boss I'd ever had. She'd tear apart my presentations only to rebuild them with me teaching me to see weaknesses in strategy I hadn't noticed. When clients praised my work, Diana made sure they knew I was responsible. She was tough, but fair, and I believed she was genuinely invested in my professional development. The first time Diana and Ryan met was at the company holiday party last December. They seemed to hit it off, talking about architectural trends and design philosophy, while I mingled with colleagues. I remember feeling proud that my husband and my mentor got along so well. Now that memory makes me nauseous. About 3 months ago, I started noticing subtle changes. Diana began taking a more hands-on approach with my projects, scheduling late meetings that often ran past 7. She'd ask personal questions about my marriage, which I attributed to friendly interest. Meanwhile, Ryan started working later too, claiming a big project was keeping him at the office. He became protective of his phone, taking calls in another room or texts with the phone angled away from me. My friend Taylor was the first to point out these changes. During our monthly dinner, she asked if everything was okay between Ryan and me. I dismissed her concerns, blaming work stress for the distance I hadn't even fully acknowledged. "You're being paranoid," I told her. "Ryan and I are fine. We're just busy." A week before everything fell apart, Ryan and I celebrated our anniversary at Castello, the Italian restaurant, where we had our first date after reconnecting. He seemed distracted, checking his watch and phone throughout dinner. When I asked if something was wrong, he mentioned being preoccupied with a difficult client. Then casually, he mentioned that he'd met Diana at a business mixer the previous week, the one I had to miss due to a family emergency. "Diana mentioned you're in line for the associate director position," he said, swirling his wine glass. "She thinks very highly of you." I felt a flush of pride, then believing my hard work was being recognized. How could I have known that while Diana was praising me to my husband, they were laying the groundwork for betrayal? The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, unusual since Ryan rarely cooked breakfast on weekdays. He stood at the stove in his dress shirt and tie, spatula in hand, smiling as I entered the kitchen. "Morning, sleepyhead," he said, sliding a plate of perfectly crispy bacon and fluffy scrambled eggs in front of me. "I thought you could use a good breakfast. You mentioned you have that big North Star presentation today, right?" I nodded, surprised by his thoughtfulness and the fact that he'd remembered my presentation. "This is unexpected. What's the occasion?" "No occasion." Ryan shrugged, pouring me coffee. "Just wanted to do something nice. By the way, I'll be late tonight. Meeting with the Thompson client about their lake house renovations." I sipped my coffee, watching him over the rim of my mug. "Will you be home for dinner?" "Probably not. Don't wait up," he said, kissing the top of my head before grabbing his keys. "Knock 'em dead today, Pen." I arrived at the office by 8, immediately diving into final preparations for the North Star presentation. Our team had spent weeks developing a comprehensive rebranding strategy for this major retail client, and as lead strategist, I needed everything to be perfect. Around 9:30, Diana swept into the office in her signature red Louboutins and black tailored suit. She stopped by my desk, leaning against the edge as she examined my presentation notes. "The mock-ups look fantastic, Penelope," she said, offering rare, unprompted praise. "You've really captured what North Star needs for their demographic shift." During our 10 o'clock team meeting, Diana did something even more surprising. She highlighted my contributions in front of the entire department. Penelope's strategy for the North Star campaign demonstrates exactly the kind of innovative thinking that sets Jackson Media apart. She announced, making direct eye contact with our CEO, who had unexpectedly joined the meeting. By lunchtime, I was riding high on confidence. I joined Jessica, our digital marketing specialist, at the cafe across the street. "Diana's in a suspiciously good mood," Jessica remarked, unwrapping her sandwich. "Last week she made Brad cry during the performance review, and today she's handing out compliments like candy." "Maybe she's finally recognizing good work," I suggested. Jessica gave me a skeptical look. "Or maybe it has something to do with that lunch I saw her having last Thursday. Very cozy with some handsome guy at tavern on the square. Definitely not a client meeting from the way they were leaning in." I laughed it off. Diana's personal life is none of our business. She's probably just in a good mood because the North Star campaign is coming together. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan confirming his late meeting. I replied with a quick, "Good luck," before heading back to the office, completely focused on the presentation ahead. The afternoon flew by in a blur of last-minute adjustments and rehearsals. By 8 o'clock, most of the office had cleared out, but I remained at my desk making final tweaks to the slide deck. Diana stopped by coat draped over her arm. "Still here, Penelope. Dedication like this is why you're my star player," she said, checking her watch. "I'm heading out to an important meeting, but I'll review the final presentation first thing tomorrow." "Thanks, Diana. I'm just wrapping up," I replied, noticing she had applied fresh lipstick and perfume. I thought nothing of it. Diana always looked impeccable regardless of the hour. By 9:30, my eyes were burning from staring at the screen. I saved the presentation one final time, gathered my things, and headed out. The office was nearly empty, just 2 lights visible from the financial department and the security guard at his desk near the entrance. In my exhausted state, I walked straight to my car, completely forgetting my phone still charging on my desk. The drive home passed in a blur. Pulling into our empty driveway, I felt a wave of relief that the day was over. Inside, I kicked off my heels and poured a glass of wine, ready to decompress. It was only when I went to text Ryan that I realized my phone was missing. A quick search of my purse and car confirmed my suspicion. It was still at the office. I stood in the kitchen debating my options. I could wait until morning, but I was expecting important client emails that might need immediate responses. After a moment's hesitation, I slipped my shoes back on, grabbed my keys, and headed out again. The night was chilly for September, and the office parking lot was half empty when I arrived just after 10. I pulled into my usual spot, gathering my purse, when a familiar car caught my attention. Ryan's blue Audi parked in the far corner under a dying streetlight. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing. Ryan was supposed to be at a client meeting across town. What was his car doing in my office parking lot? Initial confusion gave way to a sickening realization as I noticed there were two people in the car. The passenger had distinctive red hair that caught the dim light. Diana's red hair. They hadn't noticed me yet, too engrossed in their intimate conversation. I sat frozen, watching my husband lean in toward my boss, their profiles illuminated momentarily by the light of a passing car. My stomach dropped. The breakfast, the late meetings, Diana's unusual praise, Jessica's comment about the lunch, pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even known I was solving fell into horrible place. Without fully realizing what I was doing, I turned off my engine and stepped out of my car. My legs moved on autopilot, carrying me toward Ryan's car, while my mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Should I confront them immediately? Gather more information first. Walk away and pretend I saw nothing. Each option flashed through my mind in the seconds it took to cross the parking lot. I was 20 feet away when they finally noticed me. Ryan's head turned, our eyes locking through the windshield. His expression morphed from confusion to horror as recognition dawned. Diana, who had been leaning close to him, jerked back suddenly, her hand frantically smoothing her skirt and adjusting her blouse. The last few steps to the car were the longest of my life. I stopped directly beside the driver's window, my shadow falling across Ryan's panicked face. For several heartbeats, we simply stared at each other through the glass. Finally, Ryan rolled down the window, his hand visibly trembling. "Penelope," he stammered, "this isn't— I can explain." I cut him off with a raised hand, surprised by my own calmness. "Don't insult me with lies, Ryan." My voice sounded strange, detached, as if belonging to someone else. "I saw enough." Diana leaned forward. Then, her composure already returning, though her lipstick was smudged. "Penelope, this is an unfortunate misunderstanding. Ryan and I were discussing the Thompson project." "The Thompson project," I echoed, looking pointedly at Diana's rumpled blouse and the visible hickey forming on her neck. "Is that what we're calling it?" Ryan ran his hands through his disheveled hair. "Babe, please let me explain." "How long?" I asked, the question hanging in the cold night air. "Pen, it's not like that." "How long?" Each word was ice. Diana straightened in her seat, apparently deciding damage control was necessary. "Penelope, I understand you're upset, but let's discuss this professionally tomorrow when— I'm not talking to you as my boss right now." "Diana," I said, not taking my eyes off Ryan, "I'm talking to the woman who's in a car with my husband at 10 o'clock at night. So unless you want me to start this conversation with the HR director instead, I suggest you let Ryan answer my question." Ryan's face crumpled. 3 months, he whispered. "It just happened. We didn't mean for it to— 3 months. I repeated the timeline, aligning with all the late nights, the distracted conversations, the distance I'd felt growing between us. "So every time you said you were working late—" "Not every time," he protested weakly. "The Thompson client meeting tonight, was that a lie too?" His silence was answer enough. Diana had recovered her typical authoritative demeanor. "Penelope, I think we all need to take a step back. This is a delicate situation that could have implications for all of us. I'd hate to see your career affected by an emotional reaction." The thinly veiled threat didn't escape me. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, which I'd found in my car, after all forgotten in the center console rather than at my desk, and snapped several photos of them together in the car. "For clarity," I said, tucking the phone away, "now I'm going inside to actually get my work phone from my desk. I suggest you both be gone when I come back out." I turned to walk away when Diana called after me. "Penelope, I hope you'll consider how we move forward carefully. Your performance review is coming up, and I'd hate for this personal matter to cloud professional judgments." I stopped and turned back. "That sounded remarkably like a threat, Diana. I wonder if the board would find it interesting that you're leveraging your position to cover up an affair with an employee's husband. Something to consider while you're straightening your clothes." The security guard looked up curiously as I entered the building. "Everything okay, Ms. Sullivan? Forget something." "Just my phone, Sam," I replied, forcing a smile. "Won't be a minute." In the elevator alone at last, I pressed my forehead against the cool metal wall and took deep, shuddering breaths. By the time I reached my floor, I had composed myself enough to walk steadily to my desk, retrieve my actual work phone, and return to the elevator without breaking down. When I got back to the parking lot, Ryan's car was gone. I sat in my own car for nearly 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel before I felt steady enough to drive. My phone had accumulated several missed calls and texts from both Ryan and Diana in that short span. I ignored them all and drove home in silence, tears finally streaming down my face. Ryan was pacing in our living room when I arrived home, having clearly sped to beat me there. He looked up desperately as I entered, his eyes red and puffy. "Pen, please, we need to talk," he pleaded, moving toward me. I stepped back, maintaining distance between us. "There's nothing to talk about tonight." My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "It meant nothing. It was a stupid mistake." "A 3-month mistake," I interrupted, dropping my purse on the entryway table. "That's quite a prolonged error in judgment, Ryan." "I was going to end it," he insisted, following as I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water with shaking hands. "Diana was making it complicated because of your job, and I didn't want to hurt your career. I was trying to protect you." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. "How noble of you to protect me by sleeping with my boss. I'm sure that was your primary concern. You've been so focused on work, Pen. Always at the office, always on your laptop, even at home. I felt invisible." His tone shifted to accusatory. "Diana noticed me. She listened. Don't you dare blame me for your choices." I said, my composure finally cracking. "I've been working hard for us, for our future. The one we planned together." Ryan ran his hands through his hair. I know. I messed up. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll change jobs if I need to. Please, Pen, don't throw away 5 years over one mistake." "Go sleep in the guest room," I said, suddenly exhausted beyond words. "We'll talk tomorrow." I lay awake all night in our bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past few months through this new lens of betrayal. How many dinners had we shared where he'd been texting her under the table? How many times had he showered immediately after coming home from work? How many lies had I believed without question? Morning arrived with no sleep and no clarity. I dressed mechanically for work, not sure if I was making the right decision by going in, but needing the normalcy of routine. Ryan had called in sick, and he intercepted me in the hallway as I prepared to leave. "Please, let's talk before you go," he begged, still in his pajamas, looking haggard. "I have a presentation today that I've worked weeks on," I replied. "Unlike some people, I don't abandon my professional responsibilities because of personal drama." The drive to work felt surreal. I parked far from where Ryan's car had been the night before, unable to look at that spot without my stomach churning. I arrived earlier than usual, hoping to avoid immediate confrontation with Diana. My hope was short-lived. An email from Diana awaited me. My office, 8:15 a.m. I took a deep breath, gathered my notes for the North Star presentation scheduled for 11 years, and headed to her office. Diana sat behind her immaculate desk, looking remarkably composed for someone caught in a compromising position just hours before. Only the extra layer of concealer on her neck betrayed any evidence of the previous night. "Close the door, Penelope," she instructed, her voice carrying its usual authority. I did so, then remained standing rather than taking the seat she indicated. "I think we should address last night directly," Diana began. "What you saw was a momentary lapse in judgment that both Ryan and I regret deeply." "A 3-month lapse seems more like a calculated decision than a moment," I replied. Diana leaned forward, steepling her fingers. "Regardless, I want you to know that this situation doesn't need to affect your position here. In fact, I've been speaking with the board about the associate director opening. With my recommendation, the position could be yours by the end of the quarter." I stared at her, understanding dawning. "Are you offering me a promotion to keep quiet about your affair with my husband?" "I'm acknowledging your talent and ensuring a personal matter doesn't derail either of our careers," she corrected smoothly. "We're both professionals, Penelope. I'd hate to see your potential compromised by emotional reactions." "That's the second time you've implied threats about my career," I noted. I wonder if that constitutes a hostile work environment. Diana's expression hardened. Be reasonable, Penelope. Office politics can be complicated. I'm offering you a path forward that benefits everyone. Everyone except my dignity, I replied, turning toward the door. I'll be working from my desk until the North Star presentation. After that, I need to make a call to HR. Think carefully about this, Diana called after me. You're making a mistake that could follow your career for years. I walked straight to my office and closed the door, then called Megan from HR requesting an urgent meeting. 30 minutes later, I sat across from her, calmly laying out the events of the previous night and Diana's subsequent behavior. I understand this is deeply personal, Megan said, taking notes. But Diana's attempts to leverage your career in this situation potentially violate several company policies. We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation. In the meantime, would you be comfortable working remotely? I nodded. After my presentation today, I've worked too hard to hand it off. Of course, Megan agreed. I'll speak with the CEO immediately. Please document any further communication from Diana. I returned to my office to gather essential files, aware of curious glances from coworkers who seemed to sense something was wrong. Jessica approached as I was packing my laptop. Everything okay? She asked quietly. People are saying Diana looks like she's about to explode, and you're clearing out your desk. I'm working remotely for a while, I explained, not ready to share the full story. Just some HR issues being sorted out. Jessica's eyes widened with understanding. This is about that guy I saw her with, isn't it? Oh my God, Penelope, was it? I nodded, slightly unable to say the words. That absolute witch, Jessica whispered fiercely. What can I do? Cover for me with the team. Say I'm handling client emergencies remotely. Consider it done, she promised, squeezing my arm supportively. I delivered the North Star presentation on autopilot, professional muscle memory carrying me through. The clients loved it, completely unaware of the personal earthquake shifting my foundation. Diana sat at the back of the room, her face unreadable. As soon as the meeting concluded, I slipped out a side door, avoiding further conversation. Arriving home, I found Ryan waiting, still unshowered and wearing yesterday's clothes. You went to HR about Diana, he demanded as soon as I walked in. She just called me, completely panicked. Do you understand what you've done? Something inside me finally snapped. What I've done? Are you seriously more concerned about her career than what you both did to me? That's not fair. I've been trying to talk to you to explain. Explain what, Ryan? How you lied to my face for months, how you slept with my boss, and then sat across the dinner table from me discussing my day with her. What exactly needs more explanation? We didn't mean for it to happen, he insisted. It started with innocent lunches to discuss a potential project for her vacation home. Then one night we were working late, had too much wine. Stop, I said, raising my hand. I don't need the details of how you justified betraying me. The point is, you did repeatedly for months. You had countless opportunities to stop, to come clean, to choose our marriage. You didn't. I love you, Pen. Diana was just available when you weren't. The casual cruelty of his statement left me breathless. I think you should leave for a few days, I said finally. I can't look at you right now without feeling sick. This is my house too, he protested. Yes, the house we bought to raise a family in, I replied. How's that working out? I walked upstairs and mechanically packed a bag for him, ignoring his continued protests and explanations. When I handed him the suitcase, his face finally crumpled into genuine remorse. I really messed up, didn't I? He whispered. Yes, I agreed simply. You did. After he left, the silence in the house was deafening. I called Taylor, who arrived 20 minutes later with wine and takeout. Tell me everything, she said, pouring generous glasses for us both. As I recounted the events, the reality of my situation finally hit me full force. I broke down in Taylor's arms, sobbing uncontrollably for the first time since discovering the betrayal. She held me through it all, offering no platitudes, just the solid presence of true friendship. You're going to get through this, she said finally. and I'll be right beside you every step of the way. The next several days passed in a blur of remote work and emotional processing. HR had initiated a formal investigation requesting I forward any communication from Diana. She'd sent several emails, each walking a fine line between professional courtesy and subtle intimidation. Ryan's calls and messages oscillated wildly between desperate apologies and defensive justifications. "I never meant to hurt you," he'd write, followed hours later by, "If you hadn't been so focused on your career, I wouldn't have felt neglected." I discovered through HR that Diana had a history of questionable relationships with colleagues and subordinates partners. Nothing that had resulted in formal complaints, but enough whispered incidents to establish a pattern. The company's legal team was taking my situation seriously, concerned about potential liability. Working from my dining room table, I maintained professional output while my personal life imploded. The distance from the office allowed me to focus on deliverables without the distraction of office politics and gossip, though Jessica kept me updated on the rumors swirling through the department. "Diana's on thin ice," she texted on Thursday. "The CEO called her in twice yesterday. She's telling everyone it's about budget approvals, but her assistant says she looked like she'd been crying afterward." On Friday afternoon, Ryan showed up unannounced, using his key to enter while I was on a conference call. "We need to talk," he said when I ended the call, standing in the dining room doorway, looking more put together than when he'd left. "I've had time to think." "You should have called first," I replied, closing my laptop. "This isn't your house to walk into whenever you want anymore." "I'm still your husband," he countered, sitting down across from me. "And I want to fight for our marriage." For the next hour, Ryan laid out his version of events: how Diana had pursued him initially, how their affair had been physical but not emotional, how he'd realized in recent weeks that he wanted to end it. He spoke about counseling, about rebuilding trust, about a fresh start, perhaps in a new city away from Diana and the memories. As he talked, I studied his familiar face, searching for the man I'd married. Instead, I saw someone I barely recognized. Someone capable of sustained deception, someone who could justify betrayal by blaming my career ambition, someone who had the audacity to expect forgiveness without truly understanding the depth of his betrayal. "There's something you need to know," I said when he finally paused. "I found your secret email account." His face paled. "What?" "The night after I caught you, I couldn't sleep. I used your laptop to watch a movie, and you were still logged into Gmail. I saw the notification from your other account, the one you used just for Diana." Pen I. 6 months, Ryan, not 3. You've been lying about that too." He swallowed hard. "The timeline doesn't change how I feel about you." "Maybe not, but it changes how I feel about your apologies." I stood up, needing physical distance. "I also found the bracelet you bought her for her birthday, the one hidden in your golf bag. Was that just physical too? A platinum bracelet with her birthstone?" Ryan had no response. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "And this time, don't come back until I contact you." Later that evening, I received an unexpected update from Megan in HR. Diana had been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. More surprisingly, I was being asked to temporarily cover her duties. "The board recognizes your capability and professionalism during this difficult situation," Megan explained over the phone. "They want to assure you that your career won't suffer because of Diana's actions." The following Monday, I returned to the office for the first time since the confrontation. Diana's office stood empty, her personal items removed over the weekend. The team looked to me with a mixture of curiosity, sympathy, and respect as I led the morning meeting from Diana's usual position at the head of the table. That afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Penelope, this is Diana." Her voice sounded smaller outside the office context. "I'm calling from my personal phone." "I have nothing to say to you," I replied, my hand tightening around the receiver. "I'm at your house," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "We need to talk." I ended the call and drove home in a controlled fury, finding Diana's red BMW parked in my driveway. She sat on the porch steps, sunglasses covering her eyes despite the cloudy day. "You have incredible nerve," I said, not bothering with greetings. Probably, she agreed, standing. But I've never lacked courage. Can we talk inside? I prefer not to air our situation to your neighbors. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door and led her into the living room, maintaining a careful distance. I've been asked to resign, Diana said without preamble, removing her sunglasses to reveal reddened eyes. With severance, but my reputation in the industry is likely damaged beyond repair. That sounds like a consequence of your actions, I observed. Why are you here? Because contrary to what you might believe, I'm not a monster. She sat on the edge of my couch. My marriage ended 3 years ago because my husband had an affair with my sister. I know the pain you're feeling. I stared at her, trying to reconcile this information with the woman who had caused the same pain for me. That makes your actions worse, not better. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Diana clarified. I'm here because you deserve to know that Ryan pursued me as much as I pursued him. He told me your marriage was effectively over, that you stayed together for appearances. He said you were having an affair with someone from the digital team. The room seemed to tilt slightly. That's a lie. I know that now. Diana looked genuinely regretful. I should have verified his claims instead of believing what I wanted to hear. That doesn't excuse my behavior, but I thought you should know the full truth before you consider reconciliation. After she left, I sat alone in the growing darkness, absorbing this final betrayal. Ryan hadn't just cheated. He'd created an elaborate fiction that painted me as the villain to justify his actions. The realization solidified something inside me. There was no coming back from this. The next day, I received notification that Diana had officially resigned. The board wanted to know if I intended to pursue legal action against the company for allowing a hostile work environment. After consultation with my newly retained attorney, I decided against it, focusing instead on healing rather than prolonging the conflict. With Diana gone and an official offer to apply for her now vacant position, I faced a crossroads. Continue at a company where my personal drama was now office legend, or use this upheaval as an opportunity for a complete fresh start. 2 weeks after discovering the affair, I found myself moving between extremes of emotion: rage that left me shaking, grief that rendered me immobile, and brief moments of determined clarity. My body physically manifested the stress. I'd lost 7 pounds, dark circles permanently shadowed my eyes, and tension headaches became my constant companion. Returning to the office full-time brought its own challenges. Co-workers alternated between awkward sympathy and thinly veiled curiosity. The empty office where Diana once ruled remained a visual reminder of everything that had happened. I caught whispers that stopped when I entered rooms, saw the pitying glances from colleagues who had previously envied my perfect marriage. In the 3rd week, the CEO requested a meeting to discuss my future with the company. Penelope, your handling of this situation has shown remarkable professionalism, he began once we were settled in his corner office. The board has been impressed with how you've maintained team productivity during this transition. Thank you, I replied, hands clasped tightly in my lap. We'd like to offer you Diana's position permanently, he continued. Marketing director with the appropriate salary adjustment and benefits. You've earned it through your work, not because of the circumstances. I stared at the contract he slid across the desk. The promotion I'd been working toward for years, now tainted by association with betrayal. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully. May I have a few days to consider? Ryan had moved out permanently by then, leaving his house key under the welcome mat as I'd requested. The silence of the empty house was both a blessing and a curse. Freedom from confrontation, but ample space for my thoughts to spiral. I moved into the guest bedroom, unable to sleep in our marital bed without imagining Diana there with him. Telling friends about the separation proved nearly as painful as the betrayal itself. Each explanation reopened the wound, each sympathetic response a reminder of what I'd lost. Some friends chose sides, others offered platitudes about time healing all wounds, and a few disappeared entirely uncomfortable with the messiness of my situation. The physical symptoms worsened. My clothes hung loose, my wedding ring slipped off when I forgot to remove it, and exhaustion became my baseline state. Taylor grew increasingly concerned, showing up with groceries I couldn't remember to buy, and insisting I eat while she watched. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday night 3 weeks after the discovery. Alone in the house that once represented our future, I found myself staring at our wedding album. Rage surged through me with such force that before I realized what was happening, I had hurled the album against the wall, glass shattering across the hardwood floor. One by one, I grabbed framed photos of our life together, smashing each against the floor until I stood breathless amid the destruction. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in my career, unable to summon the energy to maintain the professional facade. I remained in bed for 3 days straight, ignoring calls, eating only when Taylor forced food upon me, staring at a half-written resignation letter on my laptop. On the third day of my self-imposed isolation, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Penelope, it's Mark Donovan." The voice of my former colleague who had left Jackson Media a year earlier was unexpectedly comforting. "Jessica gave me your number. She's worried about you." "I'm fine," I said automatically, my voice hoarse from disuse. "No, you're not," he replied gently. "And that's okay. I went through something similar last year with my ex. Different circumstances, same devastation." For the next hour, Mark shared his experience of betrayal, breakdown, and eventual rebuilding. As a divorced man who had found his way back to happiness, his perspective cut through the fog of my despair. "The mistake I made was trying to skip the pain," he said. "You have to go through it to get past it, but you don't have to destroy your career in the process." That afternoon, I showered for the first time in days and made an appointment with a therapist Jessica had recommended. Klein, a compassionate woman in her 50s, created a space where I could finally articulate the depth of my pain without judgment. "What hurts most?" she asked during our first session. "That I didn't see it coming," I admitted. "That I thought our marriage was just going through a busy phase when actually it was ending. That they made me doubt my own perception of reality." "That's gaslighting," she observed. "A form of emotional abuse." The validation that I wasn't simply being oversensitive or dramatic cracked something open inside me. For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge that I had been wronged profoundly and deliberately by the two people I had trusted most. That night, I started a journal pouring out years of accumulated thoughts and feelings. Among the pain and anger, I found surprising insights about my own unhappiness that predated the discovery. How I'd sublimated personal dissatisfactions into career ambition. How Ryan and I had stopped genuinely communicating months before the affair began. How Diana's mentorship had always carried undertones of competition rather than true support. The following weekend, I called my younger sister in California, with whom I'd grown distant over recent years. "I've been so worried about you," Melissa said, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you call sooner?" "I didn't want to be the failure of the family," I admitted. "The one with the broken marriage." "Oh, Pen," she sighed. "You're the strongest person I know. This doesn't change that." Our conversation lasted hours, reconnecting threads of sisterhood that had frayed through neglect. By the end, I had agreed to visit her in San Francisco the following month. My first plan for the future that felt genuinely appealing. Gradually, I began to recognize how much of myself I had lost in my marriage and career. Small decisions became exercises in rediscovery. What did I actually like to eat when not considering Ryan's preferences? What colors did I prefer when not coordinating with our carefully designed home aesthetic? What activities had I abandoned that once brought me joy? One Sunday morning, standing in the middle of our bedroom, his absence still palpable in the half-empty closet, I made an impulsive decision to reclaim the space. I stripped the bed we had shared, bundled the linens for donation, and rearranged the furniture. At the hardware store, I selected a bold teal paint for the accent wall, a color Ryan had vetoed when we first moved in. That evening, surrounded by painting supplies and listening to music I loved, rather than our compromised playlists, I felt the first genuine smile cross my face in weeks. The room transformation became symbolic, messy, imperfect, but undeniably mine. The next morning, I packed the remaining items from Ryan's dresser and closet boxing, everything to be shipped to the apartment address his lawyer had provided for divorce paperwork. Each item removed created more space for my healing. That night, I slept in the newly arranged room under fresh sheets, chosen solely for my comfort. For the first time since the discovery, I slept through until morning without nightmares or anxiety jolting me awake. I awoke feeling something I had forgotten existed: peace. Looking at my reflection as I prepared for work, I saw someone I barely recognized, thinner certainly with new lines of worry etched around my eyes, but also someone with a steady gaze and determined set to her jaw. Someone who had been broken but was finding her own way to wholeness. I walked into the office that day with a new clarity. After my morning meetings, I requested time with the CEO. "I've made my decision about the marketing director position," I told him. "I'll accept with two conditions. First, I want to implement a clear company policy on personal relationships that create conflicts of interest. Second, I want to build a more collaborative leadership structure in the marketing department." He studied me with newfound respect. "Those are reasonable conditions. Welcome to the executive team, Penelope." As I left his office, I passed Diana's former assistant, now mine. "Lisa, could you schedule a team meeting for tomorrow morning? We're going to make some changes." Later that day, an email arrived from Ryan's lawyer about our divorce proceedings. Opening the attachment, I expected the usual surge of pain. Instead, I felt a surprising lightness. Not happiness, certainly, but relief. The path forward was clearing one difficult step at a time. 6 months after that fateful night in the parking lot, I sat in my office, not Diana's repurposed space, but a newly designed corner office that reflected my own aesthetic and management style. The morning sun streamed through windows that overlooked the city, illuminating the awards our team had won under my leadership for the North Star campaign. The divorce had been finalized with less drama than I'd feared. Ryan, perhaps out of guilt or simple exhaustion, hadn't contested the division of assets I proposed. Our house had sold quickly, allowing me to purchase a downtown condo that felt entirely my own, no ghosts of broken promises haunting its rooms. Through industry connections, I'd learned that Ryan and Diana's relationship had imploded within weeks of being exposed. According to mutual acquaintances, they'd tried briefly to build something from the wreckage of two destroyed relationships, only to discover their connection couldn't withstand the harsh light of day. Diana had relocated to Seattle, occasionally appearing in industry publications with diminished prominence. Ryan had taken a position with a smaller firm, his career momentum stalled by the personal scandal. Their fates occupied less and less of my thoughts as months passed. The acute pain of betrayal had evolved into something more complex, a blend of gratitude for lessons learned and occasional wistfulness for the future I'd once imagined. The marketing department had transformed under my leadership. I'd implemented structural changes that fostered collaboration rather than competition, creating an environment where talent could flourish without the toxic dynamics I'd experienced under Diana. Jessica had become my right hand, her digital expertise complementing my strategic vision as she stepped into a newly created associate director role. My friendship with Taylor had deepened through the crisis, her unwavering support creating a bond that felt unbreakable. Weekend brunches with her became sacred time for laughter and authentic connection. Through her encouragement, I'd rediscovered old passions, joining a photography club that took weekend excursions to capture landscapes, auditioning for a community theater production of The Glass Menagerie, finding joy in creative expression outside my career identity. The trip to visit Melissa in California had healed family wounds I'd long ignored. Walking along the Pacific shoreline with my sister, I'd shared vulnerabilities I'd previously hidden behind achievement and apparent perfection. Her acceptance of my messy, authentic self helped me extend the same compassion inward. Therapy continued, shifting from crisis management to deeper exploration of patterns and growth. Dr. Klein had helped me recognize relationship red flags I'd previously ignored or rationalized, building healthier boundaries in both personal and professional spheres. My first post-divorce date had been awkwardly endearing. Dinner with a literature professor Taylor had introduced me to. Though no romantic spark ignited the evening represented an important milestone in my healing journey. I was moving forward open to possibilities, but no longer defining my worth through partnership. A surprising friendship had developed with Lisa Diana's former assistant. Initially guarded, she had gradually revealed the toxic work environment Diana had created. Her relief at the departmental changes palpable. Her institutional knowledge proved invaluable as I restructured the team, and her loyalty shifted naturally to supporting my leadership vision. One Tuesday morning in early spring, an industry event brought an unexpected encounter. Stepping off the stage after delivering a keynote address on ethical marketing practices, I came face to face with Ryan in the networking area. He looked older somehow, though only months had passed. New lines around his eyes, a certain heaviness in his posture. "Congratulations on the speech," he said after an awkward pause. "You always were brilliant at this stuff." "Thank you," I replied, surprised by the calm detachment I felt. Where once his presence would have triggered emotional turmoil, I now felt only a mild curiosity, as if observing a character from a book I'd read long ago. "Are you doing okay?" he asked, genuine concern mixing with evident discomfort. I considered the question seriously before answering. "I am, actually. Better than okay." "Good. That's good." He shifted his weight, adjusting his conference badge. "Listen, I know it doesn't change anything, but I am sorry, Penn. Not just for getting caught, but for everything. You deserved better." "Yes," I agreed simply. "I did." As I walked away, I realized the encounter had given me something unexpected. Closure without reconciliation, acknowledgement without reopening wounds. The man I had loved and the life we had shared were firmly in my past, valuable for lessons learned but no longer defining my present or future. Back in my office, a photo on my desk caught my attention. Not a posed portrait or formal occasion, but a candid shot Taylor had captured during a recent hiking trip. In it, I stood atop a mountain ridge, arms outstretched in triumph, face lifted toward the sun. The physical strength gained through months of therapeutic hiking matched the inner resilience reflected in my posture and expression. My phone chimed with a message from Mark Donovan, who had become a valued friend and occasional dinner companion as we navigated our post-divorce lives in parallel. "Still on for jazz tonight, new quartet playing at the Blue Note." I smiled, typing a quick confirmation. The possibility of romance had begun to flicker between us, but we were proceeding with the careful deliberation of two people who understood the value of solid foundations. As afternoon sun slanted through my office windows, I found myself gazing at the parking lot where everything had changed 6 months earlier. Rather than the expected pang of pain, I felt an unexpected sense of gratitude. That moment of devastating clarity had ultimately freed me from relationships built on deception and power imbalance, catalyzing growth I might otherwise have deferred indefinitely. The journey from that night to this moment had been neither linear nor easy. There had been days when grief threatened to pull me under, when rage burned hot enough to consume everything in its path, when doubt whispered that starting over required more courage than I possessed. Yet each day I had chosen to take one more step forward, to face one more truth, to reclaim one more piece of myself. The betrayal that once defined my story had become merely a chapter, significant but not conclusive. The narrative continued now, authored with greater intention and authenticity. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed, and built connections deeper than those that had been lost. The future stretched before me not as the predetermined path I once clung to, but as an open landscape of possibilities entirely my own to explore. If you've ever experienced betrayal or found yourself starting over when you least expected it, I hope my story reminds you that healing isn't just possible, it's inevitable when you face each painful truth with courage. Have you ever had to completely reimagine your life? Drop a comment below about how you navigated your own unexpected turning points. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with anyone who might need to hear that their story doesn't end with betrayal. It simply takes an unexpected turn towards something better. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to discovering what you truly deserve.